and welcome to Hot Flush Lawyers, the podcast where we discuss the menopause and its impact with business leaders, healthcare professionals, and other inspirational women who bring to life their personal experiences of the menopause, discuss how times have changed, and share how the menopause has affected them in their lives and careers. Now, over to our two hosts, Clare Thornton and Amanda Gait. We hope you enjoy this episode of Hot Flush Lawyers.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Hot Flush Lawyers, sponsored by Thornton Jones Solicitors. So I'm Clare Thornton, Managing Director of Thornton Jones.
I'm Amanda Gait, Head of Private Client at Thornton Jones.
And today we have our lovely guest, Marie Horner. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you.
Marie is an employment lawyer. She does some consultancy for Thornton Jones, but also works for Alt Legal in Wetherby. And so you're very welcome, Marie.
Thank you.
So, Marie, you're a little bit younger than Amanda and I. So I'm 53 and Amanda's, what are you, 50?
I'm 50. I'm 56.
There's the menopause right there.
I had to work it out.
56.
56. Yes.
So Amanda's menopausal.
Menopausal.
I am still just perimenopausal, and I believe
48 and perimenopausal.
Perimenopausal. So do you want to tell us about your menopausal symptoms so far, your perimenopausal symptoms?
So I've definitely started with the hot sweats. And
the joys.
My poor husband, I think that was the worst phase for him, possibly, because we were getting out of bed at least once a night, changing all the sheets because they were absolutely soaked. So no sleep in that stage. And then the forgetfulness and depression, huge depression.
Oh dear.
And
what's depression that you've never had before?
Well, I've had a few bouts of depression in the past, but this was
bad.
Bad. And then you get on the HRT, and things are much better.
How long have you been on HRT?
About a year and a half now, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you visibly noticed a
huge
change.
difference. And I think once you get onto it, you forget how bad the symptoms were before, because I swapped HRT types about 5 months ago, and I was on too low a dosage of the new one, and everything came flooding back. And suddenly I was a blubbering wreck on the floor again. My husband said, "Is something not working with what you're taking?"
Can you take some more?
It wasn't until he said, "I think we need to talk about this," that I thought, Christ, it's not working anymore. What's going on? So I wasn't on a high enough dosage.
So what type are you on? Are you on patches or gel?
I was on patches, but because I do so much exercise, they were falling off a lot. So I've had to change to gel.
But that's working okay.
That's working okay. Yeah.
That's Emma at our office. She's got the patches and she runs, and she says it's a nightmare. She's having to put stickers over the patches because they slide down a leg. She said she's running and they slide down a leg down.
And I got a bit sick of the little black square that was left on the bottom
over.
Every time you take one off. And
I
scrubbing it
suppose
away.
Sweating, and it's a bit of a bad design fault, that, isn't it, for sweaty women to put patches on their waist?
Well, you shower so many times when you do sports in the morning and the evening, and you showering twice a day. It comes off so quickly. So, yeah.
I'm on the gel, and I like the gel better because you can control it a bit then, can't you?
Exactly, yes.
So if you're feeling...
It's gone up.
So do you feel that sometimes if you're feeling a bit not right,
I keep trying to put less on, but then, I don't feel right. So
I'll have 3 squirts instead of
3
2.
squirts or 4, yes.
Oh, really? Sometimes 4?
Sometimes 4.
It's really bad.
I know.
It's a bit like a drug, isn't it?
Where does the gel go? Because I don't know anything about the gel. So where does it go? You rub it into your thighs.
Yeah. But then there's always too much, so then it's on my arms.
That's right. I do that because then you've got this gel on you.
In there with it all over you. Yeah.
And so how does it work? So it just
seeps
in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, it's quite good. The only time I find it difficult is if I want to put fake tan on after. You have to wait a little bit before you put your
And is the effect instantaneous?
No. I think
it's a build-up.
It just builds up.
Oh, okay.
I use my gel in the morning and then my progesterone tablets at night.
Yes.
Do you do the same?
Yes.
And are you doing every 2 weeks with your progesterone?
Yes, between day 15
yes.
and whatever it is, 26.
That's what you do.
You sound like you're on the same sort of thing.
Yes, but I'm now on, you do 2 tablets of progesterone, 2 tablets for 14 days.
Yeah.
I now do 1 tablet all the time.
Ah, okay.
All right, okay. Why did that change?
Well, I just decided.
You just decided.
No, I just have a conversation.
She just decided she'd change it.
I had a conversation because, of course, the progesterone makes you have a period. So I was saying to them when I got to 51 or about 2 years ago, I said, how am I ever going to know that I'm through the menopause because I'm having a period every month because it's making me have one. So she said, well, you could try doing this. So I did. And I'm still having the odd, but it's not really a proper period. It's a bit of yucky black stuff, but then probably not every month, maybe every 6 weeks or so. So I'm not through it yet, but I'm getting there. So I just did it and it's fine. So there you go.
I won't just do that yet. I'm only 48 after all. I'm a spring chicken.
I was 48 when I started, so you are you are young. But I think fairly typical.
I started when I was about 45, 44.
What, with the symptoms?
With the symptoms, yeah.
Oh, did you? What? Tell us about that then.
So, I mean, the nighttime hot sweat's absolutely awful. And tiredness then, and at work, tiredness. And I guess actually, I think I didn't realise that's what it was at first, which I think is quite common, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, I ended up, I think I became so anxious and lacking confidence, and that really affected work. And I've been, where I was for nearly 20 years, and I ended up leaving that job. And I think part of it was because I was perimenopausal and I hadn't quite fully accepted that that's what the problem was. And because my confidence had gone and I was getting anxious about, the daftest things and couldn't cope with things, and I wasn't on HRT at this point. I ended up leaving my job. But actually, for me, that was quite a good thing because it gave me a new focus and exposure to new people who were up to speed on the symptoms and sort of the penny started to drop, and so that's when I was straight to the doctor. Started to get the HRT.
It's interesting because your experience is probably very similar to mine. I had, and I've sort of said before in previous podcasts that I had quite high anxiety. I had depression as well. I'd had postnatal depression with my kids, so I had suffered from depression before, but it was different, and that sort of self-doubt and all of the other symptoms that I've talked about previously. It sounds very similar to you. I mean, I changed what I did completely as well because I had all this self-doubt and didn't think that I could do the job properly.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I've spent 20 years giving seminars to rooms full of people. I have 100 odd people in a room doing a seminar without any notes, without much preparation, and that didn't faze me. And then suddenly I found myself writing pages and pages of copious notes and taking them into my seminars and having them on the lectern. And even though I didn't use them, I needed them just in case, because I completely lost all confidence that I knew what I was talking about. I did know what I was talking about, but
you did,
I just, I couldn't accept in the morning before I was going to do it that I was capable of doing it without taking those notes, just in case I forgot a word.
That's the classic words. The words.
I mean, as a lawyer, it's kind of important to remember your words. And you find yourself halfway through a sentence and that key word that was the crux of your argument and it's gone.
Yeah.
And then you're talking around it to try and describe the word that you needed.
Yes, that's the word.
It's ridiculous.
But it's quite debilitating.
It
can be quite debilitating.
And then it hits your confidence again. You just think, oh my goodness, I'm losing the plot.
So did you?
I've got dementia.
Presumably,
exactly. That's been mentioned before. That's effectively what led me to. I had a bit of a chat with somebody who'd said that they'd been taken to the doctors because their husband thought that they had Alzheimer's, and they had the menopause. It was speaking to her that had sort of led me to have the light bulb moment. Yeah. Was there a light bulb moment for you?
In terms of what it was generally.
Getting help, I suppose.
Getting help, yeah.
I had a bit of a complete breakdown in the shower one morning and my husband had to come and get me out. And
oh, really?
Yeah,
Is that serious?
really, really bad. So, I mean, as I said, I've had depression in the past and from being a teenager, actually, but that was a whole new level of
poor badness, that difficulty.
Really bad. So that was the light bulb moment.
Did you recognise it then at that point, or did you think it was something else?
The light bulb moment of there's something not right here. I need to get to the doctors.
Yeah.
But then it was when I changed jobs, because I was still at my old job then. Yeah. It was when I changed jobs that I started looking at it more. And also from a professional perspective, I was looking at it in the workplace, and I sort of started thinking, but that's me.
Yes. Yeah.
And then went back to the doctors because I didn't want the antidepressants. I didn't want, and so I went back to the doctors, and we decided that was what it was, and it was time to start on the HRT.
So you mean you were talking to other employers about managing menopause,
yes, and not quite aware of my own. Yes,
it's funny, isn't it? How that happens. Yeah,
it is, because everybody's different in the symptoms that they have, and and because I'd had depression in the past, I just thought I was going through another much worse phase than I'd ever had, and it didn't really. I didn't put two and two together that actually this might be an exacerbated session of depression because of the menopause, and
wow, it's interesting, isn't it? And did you, because you presumably go to tribunals with your work a lot? Or
I don't now, not as much. No, I don't so much now. Things tend to settle, don't they?
Yeah, they do more than they used to.
But I think I wouldn't want to do that anymore now because I just the confidence. I mean, as I say, I still give seminars to
you do still
people
do that,
in a room. That's not a problem. But
you're in control of that, aren't you?
I'm in control of that, and if I forget a word, I just laugh with the audience and tell them it's time of life, and I'm very sorry, but I'll just describe what I was trying to say, But you can't really do that in a courtroom.
No, you can't. And that's
you probably can, but
exactly
I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. So.
Well, I mean, that happened to me because I was a family lawyer, and I can remember being in the court and forgetting the name of the child that I was talking about. Totally forgetting. It was a room there was about 10 people in the room.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, really embarrassing.
Excruciating.
But I just actually had to say, I'm really sorry, I can't remember the name. And they prompted me, and I did say, I'm menopausal. So I made bit of a joke out of it. But it was one of the big reasons why I then stopped doing fee earning and became the managing director, because I do enjoy that side of it more anyway. And you had a similar.
I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I stopped doing family work. I couldn't now go into court. I couldn't do it. I haven't got the confidence to be able to do that yet. I can do exactly the same as you. I could stand up. Next week I'm doing an event where I'm stood in front of however many people, chatting about what we do. Not fazed, not even worried about it. But if you said next week you've got to go to court, I'd have a nervous breakdown. I just couldn't do that anymore. It's just not there.
I think when you're speaking, you've prepared that. There's no surprises. It's dealing with surprises, isn't it?
It is, but I don't prepare for those things either. No. But it is. I think it's entirely. It's that lack of control. You don't have a control over a situation in court or a tribunal. No. Anything could happen. You could get thrown a curveball, and your confidence isn't there for
it.
And
almost you feel like it could be used against you if you trip over your words or you say something wrong. It could be used against you by the other parties in the room. Whereas if you're giving a seminar, you can just say, "I'm really sorry. Sorry, I've forgotten the word again." You can carry on, but and you can cover it up, not cover it up, but you know what I mean. Whereas in a
also you're being paid, of course, by the client. The client's there, and you're missing.
You make a mess
the whole
of it,
thing
and
is
it's
just
embarrassing, isn't it?
It is.
And essentially, they're not going to pay you. So,
Well, I do honestly think that if I hadn't started the HRT, I wouldn't be doing my job now, because I don't think I'd be capable.
So you'd have.
I think I would have changed jobs. I would have done something else. I think I would have left.
It's so interesting, as that's sort of the whole premise of this podcast, is the impact on really capable women who've got so much to offer, so much wisdom and experience, but yet that menopause can totally destroy your career.
Absolutely.
Really.
And it's such I think it's a shock to think that just stopping your periods or whatever people might see it as being can have such an effect. And I can see why people don't understand what effect it has, because they don't see the aching joints from top to bottom that make you really tired and not wanting to get out of bed and all of those things, and the lack of words coming to mind and all of that kind of thing. And it's just your period stop, isn't it? But it's not.
Yeah,
it's just
you're right.
So much more, and a few hot flushes. If it was just that would be great. So I've gone past that now. That's lovely, but no, it's not. It's absolutely, completely destroys everything that you're doing, and if you without the HRT, I wouldn't be doing it. I know I wouldn't.
That's amazing, isn't it? And then, we were talking before with our another guest about there were a whole generation of women who during the period where we were scared of HRT, who didn't have access to that, and they would have been lost to the workplace, or were lost.
Well, that was really, I mean, it's only very recently. I don't think we can appreciate how recent it is that this has been started to talk about, and we're open about it, and the benefits of HRT are talked about. Because, as I said, I'm 56, and the period of time where I was perimenopausal, HRT was a no-no.
Yeah.
There was all this bad publicity. I mean, at the time as well, I'm vegetarian, and there was all this stuff about it being made out of hormones of horses, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not having that. And so I believed all of the stuff. So I put off HRT, and I know that when I went to see the doctor and he said you're menopausal or you're perimenopausal, I was like, I'm not going on HRT. I'm not doing it. And so I think it's changed even in the last few years that we've come out of that, and it's much more accepted. That it's just not. You should just do it. There are risks with any medication. You just got to get on with it and do it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not happy about being on HRT because I, generally speaking, I try not to take any pills and whatever.
Yeah.
So it was a real struggle to decide to do it.
Yeah.
But I absolutely had to. I didn't have a choice because I would have been a blubbering wreck on the floor, I think, if I hadn't. So.
And you mentioned that you do lots of exercise.
I do.
So do you find that helps?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I run most mornings, and that's sort of my headspace time. And weight training. My joints with the perimenopause, my joints were awful. I started to get injuries running, and I mean, I used to weight train, and I'd sort of stopped for whatever reason. And before I'd even walked into the physio's room, I thought to myself, I know what she's going to say. She's going to say, why aren't you weight training? That time of life, you need to strengthen your muscles so that you're not damaging your knees, and blah, blah, and exactly what she said. So back on the weight training, and once the HRT had properly kicked in, so much better in terms of my muscles and my bones and joints, and because it was awful. I would twist my ankle just walking upstairs, and it's like,
oh really?
Yeah, really bad.
And did you say you had achy
everything?
Yeah, lots of people talk about achy. Yeah, is it muscles that are, or
just everything?
on your whole body?
On my whole body, just everything
really?
ached from top to bottom, and I was so prone to injury when I was out running. I was off running for more than I was on because I would get an ankle twist or
Wow.
And I don't normally. I'm normally pretty strong and stable when I'm running, and I don't get the injuries. But touch wood. But I started to get injury after injury, and then I couldn't go up and down the stairs because I'd done my knee in, and I was beginning to think, my goodness, I must have arthritis or something awful's going on, and it wasn't. It was just to do with the menopause. So once I was on the HRT, that was all resolved with the weight training.
Yeah, so it's a combination of both.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And what about diet? Do you do anything different with your diet, or
no,
you just?
I'm very.
It's interesting. I don't know whether people. I haven't really. We could do with getting a guest in who's. Because I'm sure
food too much.
I've read loads. I've got literally, because obviously I've put weight is my big issue with menopause. After going through all of it and now sort of settling down, I'm probably about 1.5 stone heavier than I was pre-menopause, and I can't get rid of it, and it really annoys me. Yeah. So I've read every single diet book about the menopause, and basically there isn't one.
No.
There isn't one. It's just basically it's hormonal, and literally your metabolism slowed down. So you could take supplements to try and increase it, but that's all a load of rubbish. And so you've just got to exercise and eat healthy, and that's it.
That's exactly. I've increased my exercise, and I've gone from 4 days a week running to 5 and 6 sometimes, and then I do netball and squash and weight training, and I'm desperately trying to fight the weight. But
yes,
there's only so many hours in a day, so
well there are, and you've got to work in between.
You've got to work in between. But I don't want to reduce my food because I do like food too much. So.
Yeah, well, food is good.
Food is good.
Yeah, I know, and alcohol.
Well, you mean alcohol is good? Yes, I agree.
Well,
I don't think you meant that, did you?
No, I mean that I
helpful.
find that I do like a glass of wine, but I don't necessarily think it's very good
No. Well, it doesn't help you sleep either, does it? And sleep.
If you're menopausal, it doesn't. I mean, but I do like it. It's just, but I'm better when I don't have any alcohol for periods of time. So
yeah, I think we can all accept that that's the case, but
and probably caffeine as well. She says sitting here with a
cup of coffee.
yeah, no, I've cut out the caffeine recently because that was another one giving palpitations.
Oh, did you have palpitations?
I've still got palpitations.
Yeah, I have.
My heart's apparently fine. We've had all the checks for that, but it's just another hormonal issue, I think. So
that is the weirdest thing, isn't it? Heart palpitations, because having never had them before, I was, and I just sit watching telly and get them, and what's going on?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It is really weird, and you think you're having a heart attack at some point. It's really bad occasionally, and then it's not. It's just your hormones.
Just hormones. And why?
Why?
I never understand what the purpose of all these hormones are, and the purpose of them changing, and it's just we'll need to get a doctor on to tell us all this, don't we?
Yes, you do.
I think the thing that is really, really surprising, and is certainly surprising through the different discussions that we've had over the past few podcasts, is how different everybody's experience is of it. You've highlighted some things that I've experienced, but you've also highlighted some things that Claire's experienced and vice versa. But it's everybody's experience of it is completely different. And I think that's what surprises me. You think it's always going to be the same, because I didn't have the hot flushes. I didn't have anything like that. So so I think that's probably why I didn't clock that it was the menopause, because I wasn't.
Well, the hot flushes is the classic one, isn't it? But like the achy bones, I've never or achy joints. I've not had any of that.
I had headaches, permanent headaches.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I mean that was hormonal, because obviously it was like a hormonal headache that you used to get when you had periods. So I had permanent headaches, which have stopped since. So
at least we know there's hope.
Well, there is.
Well, if you're putting me as hope, then God help you.
I do think it's helpful for more people to talk about it, though, because my husband didn't even know the word menopause when
really?
No, he didn't even know what it was when I said it. He's like, what was that? Because his mum had never talked about it, and to be fair, my mum never talked about it.
They didn't. That generation just didn't, did they?
No, it's weird. But yeah, I think we should be talking about it, and now it's good to see. As I was saying, one of the reasons that I cottoned on was because there was so much going on in terms of employers in the workplace understanding it, and understanding that all these women that were doing such a fantastic job and suddenly their performance was dropping. Well, there's a reason. And I fully understand that, because concentration disappears, and I have to. Even now, even on the HRT, I still have to work with how my concentration works. And in a morning, I can't do those big jobs where I've got to sit down and think for a long period of time. I have to very selectively do the quick win jobs in the mornings.
Okay.
And then after lunch, I can sit down and concentrate right into the early evening. I can fine.
Wow.
But in a morning, try and get me to sit down and actually concentrate on something. It's tricky.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you're working with your symptoms.
I've got to work with that. Yeah. It's.
What sort of things do you advise employers to do to help people in perimenopause?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because every woman's different, and there's a big push for there to be menopause policies in the workplace. I'm not sure how I've drafted them. Obviously, I'm an employment lawyer. I draft these things, but I'm not sure how I feel about that, because I suppose it depends on how you present it, and how the women in the organisation feel about it, because some feel really embarrassed by the fact that we have this policy on something that's very personal. Others welcome it because they want people to talk about it and understand it. And I'm sort of in that camp, but a policy about menopause, I don't know.
It's so hard because it's so, as we say, the symptoms are so
specific to each individual as well, and how they want it dealing with is so specific as well. But I think it's a way to open a door for people to come and talk to their line manager, or if they don't want to talk to their line manager, there needs to be somebody who they can feel comfortable going to talk to. And talk about how they address things in the workplace. So, the classic is the women needing the heating on and the men wanting all the windows open, or vice versa. If you're going through the hot sweats, it might be vice versa. And it's accommodating that and understanding that, Joe Bloggs wants to sit there because they're near the window and they can get fresh air when, you know, they're having the hot sweats, or they don't want to wear this uniform in the workplace because, you know, it shows
itchy or
damp patches under the arms when they've got problems, you know. So it's about understanding that everybody's different and letting them come to you to talk about it, or, you know, if you notice that someone's struggling, maybe pulling them to one side and just asking if there's anything they wanted to talk about. You don't need to, you know, be explicit about it. You can just ask them if there's something that they want to discuss. And if performance starts to drop, then absolutely, if it's a woman of a certain age, then absolutely give them every opportunity to say that there might be an underlying reason why the performance has dropped. I mean, if they choose not to talk about it, then it's quite hard for an employer to then, you know, say, are you menopausal?
Yeah.
And you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
But, you know, give a woman an opportunity to have that conversation with you and say, well, actually, I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z, and I really need some help with this, and I need to switch around the way I do my work so that it can accommodate that. Adjustments can be really simple, really simple. But, you know, a lot of employers are embarrassed to talk about it and don't want to talk about it, or don't believe that it's a thing. That's one of the big ones. You know, don't believe that it's you know, as bad as it is, just an excuse. You know, like mental health, it's an excuse.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's
really
quite
not.
difficult, though, isn't it? I anticipate that it's quite difficult from the perspective of the person who's in that managerial position, that if you recognise that somebody is struggling, you don't want to dive in and go, is it the menopause?
No, you don't.
Because
Absolutely
it
not.
sounds patronising.
It
It sounds, you know, it might be something completely different. But it's about, I suppose, it's about recognising that there are those symptoms, and whether or not somebody is struggling, it's up to them whether or not they want to discuss it. But it is a very difficult.
Sensitive.
It's very difficult.
Sensitive. It is, and some people are happy to say, and it depends on your line manager as well. Line managers are, you know, for an employer, they're front line, and what a manager does on that initial conversation can be, you know, very significant in a lot of cases. That can be the one that ends you in the tribunal, or it can be the one that makes the workplace a great place to be and really supportive. So getting your line managers trained to recognise that there might be, you know, times in a person's life when things change, and to look for underlying causes rather than just assuming that this person can't be bothered anymore, because that's what it looks like, perhaps. You know, if you, as a lawyer, you know, time recording all the time, and suddenly you've gone from recording 6 hours a day to 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, why? If you've always done 6 hours, what is it that has caused that change? You can't just assume they can't be bothered, or they're no good anymore, let's get rid of them, which is the, you know, the common response. You know, if there's an underlying reason, then give them the opportunity to tell you before you start your formal process. Give them a chance, and, you know, often somebody will take you up on that. And
it is. I mean, but it must be so difficult, because looking back now, when I was symptomatic, when I had all of the symptoms, if somebody had actually come up to me and said, I think you're menopausal, I think I would have stabbed them, to be frank. Because I'd have been like, no, do not say that this is menopausal. There is nothing wrong with me. The problem is you. And honestly, I would have done. So it must be really, really hard, because on the one hand, it's really great that we're having these discussions. But on the other hand, you don't then want to dismiss every problem that a woman has as menopausal.
No,
do you know what I mean?
You absolutely don't.
Yeah.
And then there comes a point, though, if somebody isn't willing to accept that that's what the issue is, and maybe that's not what the issue is, but, you know, there comes a point for an employer where you do then have to start going through a process, and part of that process, if there's a possibility that it's something like the menopause, would be to get a doctor to have an input on what's going on with this person. And if you get something from a doctor to say, well, yes, they are in this stage of life, then you're on notice then that you need to start thinking about, well, hang on, do we need to make some adjustments here? Do we need to have a conversation about whether that drop in performance is to do with this, and how can we support that person to make things work better? Again, it might be a change of hours, a bit more flexibility. Maybe they don't concentrate in the morning, so let's shift your hours further in the day. I mean, I work flexibly, and I don't really start till 9:30, 10 o'clock some mornings, because, you know, I go out for my run, I get my headspace right, and then I do my bitty work to keep my mind focused. then I get on with my really, important stuff, and I can be doing that 6, 7, 8 in the evening. But I'm happy doing it at that time because that's when I can concentrate. And I don't start as early because I'm useless for everybody at that time in the morning, unless it's something that I can, unless it's a meeting with a client where, it's interaction, which is great. If it's something I need to sit down and read,
you've no chance.
No.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think as an employer, which we are, I guess we're fairly we're very enlightened about menopause in particular. Hence, we're doing this podcast. But you can't imagine that all employers aren't like that. But I imagine you have seen some.
Oh, you see it
horrific,
all the time. Yeah,
horrific
you see it all the time.
tales.
I mean, not just with the menopause, but with disabilities generally and mental health in particular. There are still a lot of employers out there who are just dismissive and see it as an excuse. And don't get me wrong, sometimes, people will use it as a way of getting out of poor performance issues and so on. But, the starting point should be, this person has an issue, let's work with them and try and make some adjustments and support them. But a lot of employers aren't willing to do that because it is a time drain. As they see it, a time drain.
Well, it's not if you're just shifting your hours later on, for
exactly.
example. I mean, still getting the same number of hours, just getting productive hours, aren't you? But
exactly.
I imagine there's some workplaces, I guess, maybe the less office-based workplaces or male-dominated workplaces that might be more
and more difficult
antiquated
for a woman to
be in.
And to say, that this is the problem because they're seen as, lesser in terms of ability then. And it's not necessarily that, it's just that they need that support to manage those symptoms so that they can continue to work at the same level that they were before. But it's also, it's embarrassing perhaps for that individual to have that conversation with a male manager. Depends on the manager, I guess. Some are very, enlightened, but not all.
Maybe if their wife's been through it.
Then they will be enlightened.
I mean, I think that's a valid point, but I still think it's difficult because I know that my husband had said to me that his place of work, there's a lady that clearly it has the same symptoms that I had, but he's like, I'm not going there. I daren't say it. But he said, it's just it's obvious. Yeah. But and I said, well, maybe you should have a discussion with maybe a friend of hers to have a discussion with her about it because she hasn't sort of recognised it yet. But I do think if you're in that managerial position, there is still work to be done with regards to how that's then dealt with sensitively for the and it's a hard balance, as I say. I mean, if somebody had said it to me, I'd have taken them out.
I think it's particularly hard for men, and particularly hard for younger women. I think if you've when you're a certain age and you're going through it, or you've been through it yourself, that's the way you would engender the conversation, isn't it? By talking about your own symptoms and I guess befriending the person on that level. But I do see it's hard for men particularly. It'd be a very awkward conversation to sort of have.
But I mean it's and it doesn't have to be that conversation. It can just be the opportunity for the person to say what's wrong, and that's more what it should be, giving them every opportunity to come to you and say, actually, I think this is what my problem is and I need to sort this out. But it is partly down to the individual having that confidence to say something.
Exactly.
And confidence is a problem when you're perimenopause also.
So it's very cyclic, isn't it?
It is completely. Yeah, it is.
Oh. Well, there we go. I think it's it's good to think about because as professional women in sort of professional environments, I think we forget sometimes that not every employer or not every employment situation is the same, is it? And that there are definitely workplaces who could do a lot.
Well, you've got a lovely working environment and very supportive of all your staff, but unfortunately that's
not the same for everybody.
No, there are still lots of employers out there who just aren't like that.
Yeah, it's so sad, isn't it?
It really is.
Well, I think it is because they're losing out on great people.
Because those people will ultimately, as you described, you would leave, wouldn't you? Yeah. You'd move careers, or you'd give up altogether, or and that's a shame because you're losing really valuable members of your team.
And so many women do just give up their career and do something else.
But not everyone
would have done. I think.
But not everyone can afford. Some people are stuck in it. Imagine you get to a level that you're earning a certain amount, and it's then
you're relying on a certain amount, and
exactly
dropping to do something where you're not going to earn that is, the thought adds to the depression, I suppose.
Of course.
You can't do this anymore, and Christ, but I'm bringing in this much, and if I do something else, I'm not going to bring in this much. So how in the hell do I get out of this situation?
It'd be interesting to see if those women, if they actually spoke up and were brave enough to speak up to their employer, whether that would make a difference. You know, I guess some employers might also be fairly shocked that it's menopause, and then it could be a really great conversation if you can be brave enough to do it. But as you say, confidence is an issue for a lot of women, isn't it? So,
but I think the woman's got to recognise at that point to be able to say that. And I think a lot of the time when you're in that situation, you don't recognise that it is the menopause. It's you're inward, you're looking inward all the time, and it's your issue, and you don't necessarily recognise that this is something that's treatable. And I mean, I think you're entirely right that, you know, sometimes we do lose these women who are really have loads of life experience and qualifications, just principally because their confidence goes and they don't have that. To be honest, if I hadn't have been at Thornton Jones at the time that it hit me, and I hadn't have been given the opportunity to change what I did, I wouldn't be practicing as a solicitor. No. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't have had the confidence to do it. So there must be other women out there that haven't had that experience that lose, and we've lost in the workplace. That they've gone, you know, they've retired or they've gone on to do other things. It's and that's the sad part of it. Even now that's still happening.
Isn't it? It's almost compounded, isn't it? Because women have, you know, imposter syndrome quite often, even before they get to the perimenopause, and then you get to perimenopause and you've got imposter syndrome and confidence loss, and you're forgetting your words, you feel completely incompetent. And at first I just thought, I've lost my mojo for doing this job. What's wrong with me? You know? But until you get help and realise, then you can't do anything about it. But I mean, I suppose that's where it sort of helps if you're starting to go through a process with an individual who isn't recognising it, and you do end up with, you know, getting medical help. Then
that could be the trigger.
It's the trigger that gives you that opportunity to have a conversation with the person and say, well, look, this is what the doctor says. This is what we need to do. Unfortunately, when you start down that performance route, a lot of people will jack the job in.
They'll go anyway.
Before you even get to the point of getting the report. It's and that's the sad.
I know. Sometimes I think even though we are, I would say, fairly enlightened, mainly because of that. The fact that I've been through it. I can remember a lawyer of ours though that did leave, and because when I look back, I guess at the time I didn't think about this, but she was in an absolute state with herself of crisis, and she came out of the law altogether. Yeah. And then has subsequently, I heard, gone back into the law in another firm, very similar to what you've experienced. And I guess I didn't even think about that at the time, that would have been... I don't think we could have done anything to support her, to be honest, because she was at absolute crisis point. Yeah. And sometimes that just happens, isn't it? But I'm glad to hear that she's gone back into it, because it wasn't about her abilities at all. It was about what she was going through. So, let's hope some women listen to this and think, makes them think.
Or gives them the confidence to say, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, because that's the biggest thing, to say, I need some help.
Yeah.
And the confidence to realise that it's, you know, it's not necessarily them, that it might be menopause, because I think that's the thing, it's recognising that's what it might be. Yeah. Because if you don't, then you just plough on thinking that you're depressed and need antidepressants, or, you know, you've got arthritis, or you're rubbish, or you've got dementia coming on, and, you know, my goodness, and it all hits you at once. I mean, you know, one of those diagnoses is bad enough, but everything all in one go, it's just hell. Yeah. Frankly.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness for HRT. That's all I can say. All we can all say, we're all HRT fans in the room. Yeah. Well, thank you, Marie. That was really, really interesting, and I think really great to hear about your experience from the employment side of things as well as your personal experience. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Hot Flush Lawyers podcast. Please be sure to follow and share this podcast and join in the conversation on our socials. We look forward to sharing our next episode with you very soon.